Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Check it out. 5 major blows to the defense is what law and crime say. This is Unique Mecca Audio coming here to break it down, and I'm going to play the defense attorney against law and crime because they said there was 5 major blows against Diddy. If they were, I'm going to concede. If they wasn't, I'm going to break it down how we see it from a street and hood point of view. Do we understand the words that are coming out my mouth? Now sit back, enjoy the ride as we take you on. All right, you know what it is. Unique Mecca Audio, man. Diggo Cassie, Diddy's love of his life. I look at what's going on with Diddy and Cassie as the ultimate Romeo and Juliet story on steroids from a hood point of view. Because don't forget, there was 2 middle-class black people that came up, and one became a billionaire, the other one attached himself to the billionaire or was attached by the billionaire to the billionaire. Because, you know, you got the rat bastards and flip-flop wearing in public trolls that'll be quick to say, oh, he said like she attached herself to him. See the way I catch that? See, you can't think as fast as I can when I talk, so try and keep up with the words that are coming out my mouth. Now, this is what Law and Crime said they have as far as 5 major blows to the defense team, and I'm going to listen to it, see if I can see to it or if we see it from a different point of view. Y'all ready? All right, let's ride.
Week 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs criminal sex crimes trial, and one of the things that I have been wondering has been some of the pieces of evidence that have proved potentially problematic for the defense, meaning are there defense losses? And by the way, this is coming from somebody who said that I think the prosecution's case is not a slam dunk. It's complicated when you talk about racketeering and sex trafficking. Those elements are not so straightforward. It's not just the jury accepting that Combs allegedly beat an alleged victim up or sexually assaulted them. These aren't state charges, these are federal charges. They're very, very specific elements that the prosecution needs to prove. Like for sex trafficking, you need to prove that Combs recruited, harbored, transported, maintained victims to engage in commercial sex acts by using force, fraud, and/or coercion. Racketeering conspiracy, the top count. Criminal enterprise, pattern of racketeering activity with at least 2 underlying crimes like forced labor, kidnapping, arson, sex trafficking, bribery, criminal agreement to do this. It's high burden. It's a high burden. Can the prosecution meet it?
All right, so let's break this down so y'all understand. What they're saying is that they have elements within the RICO. The elements is like ingredients. Let's take something real simple like a cake. You must have cake. You got to build a cake, you got to have to build a cake. See, don't mind me. You got to have eggs, milk, and flour, right? So now if you take out the milk and you replace it with water and you bake the cake and the cake tastes like a cake, look like a cake, it's not a cake because the proper ingredients was not in the cake, even though it looks like a cake. That don't mean because it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, so it quack like a duck, so it must be a duck. No, not in the court of law. So that's what we're dealing with, the elements, which is the ingredients that make up the crimes that P. Diddy is charged with. So far, the government has labeled their case to break it down as far as to show the violence of him to invoke passion out the jury. So now hopefully they would look at all the other testimony fueled by the first testimony of the violence. That's the picture they're painting. Now the defense have to come behind them and they have to paint another picture. So they got to wipe away that and show that, hold up, pause. We understand everything she said, and my client did everything she said. He whooped her, like you said. But that's domestic violence. My client is not charged with domestic violence. My client is charged with a RICO, which has elements saying that your organized supervisor controlled 5 or more people, made substantial income, and you made a profit from it. My client spent money. He hired services that was legitimate, that was registered. But you know what I mean? But these are the things that they're going to have to do. So now you understand what the elements are. They have to prove that a organized supervisor extorted, got substantial income and everything that I said from this scheme of activity called RICO. Okay? Let's get back.
But putting all of that to the side, the prosecution has been quite deliberate and methodical in what witnesses they have called and the evidence they have presented. So with that, I want to touch upon 5 of the biggest blows to the defense so far.
And I'm going to try and defend those blows if I can.
Potentially the biggest losses so far to them. So for that, I'm not going to do it alone. So for that, I want to bring on trial attorney Andrew Stoltman to talk more about this. Andrew, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
So first, before I go
welcome.
into the losses or potential losses to the defense, you would agree with me, this is not a slam dunk clear case for the prosecution, at least with respect to
Never.
the racketeering and sex trafficking charges, right?
Yeah, there's no question. With respect to the most serious charges, which are the racketeering and the sex-related charges, it's an uphill climb for prosecutors. And so I was a little surprised when these charges got filed at the federal level. And so I'm really watching this carefully. Prosecutors have scored some points, but they still have a really long way to go.
Yeah, because a lot of this alleged activity, this alleged behavior would have made up state charges for assault and battery and potentially rape and things of that nature, but there's statute of limitations issues. So how do you transform it into a federal case, charges like this? But I want to talk about the defense, and I want to talk about some problems for the defense. So number one, physical violence. It seems to me the prosecution has done an exceptional job of proving physical violence. And when we talk about force, right, and force, fraud, and/or coercion in the sex trafficking count, or using force to cause victims to engage in freak-offs, right? Cassandra Ventura Fine testified that Combs would kick her, stomp her head, drag her. The 2016 tape of Combs appearing to beat her up at the LA Intercontinental Hotel. There were photos of her alleged injuries. Text messages from Cassie to Combs can also arguably prove this. For example, there's one that says, "I'm not a rag doll, I'm somebody's child." Another message, "You are sick for thinking it's okay to do what you've done. Please stay far away from me."
All right, stop it. I got an objection to this right now. My objection to this, and I'm not defending Diddy, but I'm defending the argument. So let's get it right. I'm just having fun. This is what we call creating content. So don't take it like I'm running defending Diddy. I'm just showing you how we see it from another point of view. Now, the defense is sitting here, right? The government is coming at us. They saying that Diddy all of a sudden that he forced her, right? Because he beat her, he dragged her, he kicked her. We concede. He beat her, he dragged her, he kicked her. But he didn't beat her, drag her, or kick her to force her to do anything. He beat her, dragged her, and kicked her because he was emotionally caught up because he's what Unique Mecca audio call but I love a dog type of dude. He was acting off emotion. That emotion had nothing to do with the elevation of the RICO, of the forcing, of carrying out the acts of the RICO. Those whoopings were just straight up a man caught up in his emotions. That was an emotional person, which is still abuse all day. And he admits to he abused her. But did he force her to carry out these acts, or did he abuse her and whoop her because she got in his emotions and tickled his little muscle? That's the heart, because you got to have it Teflon in order to survive in the street. But we know he's not from the street, but I'm breaking it down from the street. Do we understand where I'm at today? All right, let's get back to Jesse Weber and let them tell you their point of view, and I'm giving it to you from a heartless point of view. Let's keep it moving.
Dawn Richard testified that she observed Combs physically abusing Cassie, told her to leave, but apparently was afraid to get involved for her own safety, that she saw injuries on Cassie. Cassie's former best friend, Kerry Morgan, testified she saw Combs be violent with Cassie in 2 separate incidents. Daniel Phillip, a man allegedly hired by Combs to have sex with Cassie, testified he saw Combs drag her into a room and then heard slapping sounds.
All right, he slapped her around. He admitted to that. But how does that add up to RICO? How does that add up to forcing to carry out the activities of the RICO? That adds up to an emotional man acting upon emotions that he has no control of. I can't give it to you no more gangster than that, man. Let's ride.
The defense even conceded that Combs was violent and seemingly admitted he engaged in domestic violence. So, Andrew, if I'm correct, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but if I'm correct, why is this so vital to the case? And am I right that this could be a loss for the defense?
Absolutely. There are jurors on this case who have probably made up their mind already simply based off of the video of him beating his girlfriend in the hotel room.
Is he charged with beating his girlfriend, or is he charged with a RICO which has 5 elements that must be proved? That he had 5 or more people working for him? That he made substantial income? That there was a continual pattern of RICO with 2 or more crimes that carry over a year and a day? Does he have extortion? Or is he just whooping her? Which is a violation. He should be punished for that to the fullest extent of the law. But should he be standing trial for RICO? That's what y'all put in the comments. Just a question. See, I strike emotion. That's how his little muscle got stricken, and he act other than a civilized man, and he should be punishing for putting his hands on that woman, or any woman for that matter. Let's say that straight coming from Unique Mecca Audio. I make light of a lot of things because we just creating content, but don't take it personal that I believe none of that crap. I'm 61 years old with 5 beautiful daughters that I love with all my heart, and never would I want them to be in the situation that Cassie was in. So don't think that I'm supporting this or supporting that. I'm just creating content, and I'm in character. All right? Now let's ride.
A lot of jurors who just look at testimony, they look at evidence, they look at the video, right? There's the old saying, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. And when they saw Combs smacking her, kicking her, hitting her, there are a lot of jurors out there that probably said guilty at that point.
Yeah, guilty of smacking and kicking and everything else, but is that a RICO? You see how they did that about it to just put out there the subliminal message that he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty. Yeah, he's guilty, guilty, guilty of putting his hands on that woman. And a few other women that they mentioned. He's guilty of all that. And he conceded to all that. So while we there, let's go to the actual charges that's going to get him life. That's going to get him no time as far as if he's guilty of hitting her or not, because he's not charged with that as a predicate act. A predicate is a substantive count. It's not a count in indictment. It's just what they call overt acts. Overt acts don't even have to be proven. Overt acts is there to show what you did over the course of the time, with acts to further the enhancement and enlargement of the conspiracy. of if it's a RICO, a CCE, which is 84821 USC. I could go all day. I studied this. I was in prison with Herbie Spurwood from, they call him Little Herbie from the French Connection, you know? That's the one they said Nicky Barnes told on. You know, I was with Juan Ramon Mata from Honduras, Mario Villabona from Colombia, Rambo, Escobar's hitman from Colombia. We was all in ADX together. You just blessed to get me to break this down from a real point of view instead of an emotional point of view. Because emotionally, all of us is upset at that video. I was furious when I saw that video. I wanted to choke on myself when I saw that video. Like, how could you dare do that to any woman? But then I had to push back out of my emotions and become a man again. I say, let's look at the overall what they charging this man for. We know he guilty of that, and we know he got to get punished for that, because God don't let things like that go unseen. You know, let's get back to this, man.
Point, even before they heard all the evidence. It's not a good look. It's a horrific look. And one of the things you do as a criminal defense attorney is you try to create sympathy for your client in the eyes of the jurors. Now,
how do you create sympathy when a man is caught on tape whooping the hell out of another female? Come on, man. You gotta eat that. You know you did that. Spears a man, stand on and let God do what he's going to do and give you your justice and your reaction to your action how God sees fit. You don't try and tell her to get out of it. Let me tell her my friend so it can take the weight away from me beating her. No. You take your own responsibility for your own actions. And that's what being an adult is, for male or female. But more times I say, you know, like it's only for men, but you know, go for you females that think you gangster too. That's right.
Now, we don't know a lot about these jurors. It seems like they skew male. They're a little bit older, but there are a whole bunch of people out there that have convicted Sean Combs as soon as they saw that video of him.
Exactly, but how could they convict him of RICO? That had 5 elements just from that video. From that video, he guilty as sin and should be whooped from a street point of view. And should be punished from a criminal point of view. But at the same time, what about this RICO?
Him beating his girlfriend.
So you're talking from an emotional standpoint, right? It not necessarily looking at the elements of the charges, right? Because that was going to be one of the big concerns of the defense is about this tape, and I'll talk about the tape in a moment. But what you're saying is not even a legal point of view. When the jury hears about this alleged violence, they may want to convict him because of that, not necessarily because it's racketeering or sex trafficking.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more conservative the jurors are, the more likely they are to simply shut down, have that curtain go in front of them and disregard the jury instructions, disregard the rest of the testimony, the defense's case, and say, this is a bad dude who beats up women, and there's no question in our mind that he's doing it because we've seen him doing it. We're going to go guilty.
Hey, everybody, this is another long...
Hey, yo, let's just take a break, all right? Make a audio, make a word, make a audio, make a word, make a audio, make a word, make a audio, make a audio. Let's keep it moving. All right.
100%. Shouldn't happen, but happens all the time. And it would be very difficult to know unless jurors came out after a verdict and said, yeah, we convict him because we didn't like him. We convict him just because we're like, we want to hold him accountable. I don't really know if it matched up to the elements. I don't know if the prosecution met their burden, but you know, unless they came out and said that. But do you think, from a legal point of view, the physical violence or the alleged physical violence, has it established the elements of sex trafficking?
Thank you.
Has it helped prove the racketeering charge? If so, how?
Not at all. And I think Diddy's lawyers did a pretty good job in their opening statement saying, look, he's basically a bad guy and he did this stuff. But that's not sex trafficking. Hiring a prostitute is not sex trafficking.
Hmm.
Beating up
Well,
your girlfriend,
wait a
it's
minute,
not sex trafficking.
wait a minute. The physical violence, doesn't it go to force, fraud, coercion? If you
No.
tie it to this pattern of sex acts, right? So the 2016 tape, we'll talk about it. I mean, if you're saying that was after a freak off, okay. If you're saying this is the environment she was around or allegedly around, not only violence but threats of violence, doesn't that feed into a sex trafficking count? Remember, it's the idea of transporting her, having these sexual episodes with sex workers who are getting paid, freak offs happening in multiple locations. I mean, the physical violence doesn't support sex trafficking?
In a vacuum, it does, but the defense has done a good job of introducing some of the text messages from Diddy's girlfriend talking about how she likes these freak offs, how she wants another one, right? Expressing affection. And if you're trying to establish coercion, I
Hmm.
think those sorts of text messages are harmful to the prosecutor's
All
case.
day.
And I would expect that to be the central point of the defense case: consent, consent, consent. These were willing participants. They came back time and time again. Even after they were free and clear, they still came back. So I think it goes to the consent related issue on the coercion
I
charges.
like this guy.
Sure, they definitely have an argument to that. The counter argument would be, yeah, she agreed at the beginning. Yeah, she agreed 95 times, but the 5 times she didn't, that's a problem for the defense. And for the racketeering, I would make the argument, one of the means and the methods of racketeering, right? This criminal enterprise that was, Combs used his businesses and his resources and his wealth and his associates to further criminal activity. One of the means and methods of this criminal enterprise was using violence or threats of violence to engage in a pattern of conduct, whether it's kidnapping or arson or sex trafficking. And I think it's not just solely about, using threats or violence to force Cassandra Ventura, allegedly force her into sex acts, but it goes to this criminal enterprise, more easily digestible and understandable for the jury, no?
Nah, hell no. Come on, Jesse. That's like saying you force someone to go to Western Union to send 10 grand for whatever reason to buy some Glocks or something. You know what I mean? That's not a part of the elements of the crime. The force is you drop to your knees when I tell you to drop to your knees and you let him violate you. That's a force. Let's stop trying to make everything equate to something that is not, because that's not what the law is. And I think that's where it is. Like when they say sex trafficking, it should say against one's will. But being that it don't say against one's will, it just says about transporting one. So now, even if you pay for a ticket that they begged you to pay for, because they begged you to come see them, you fly them to come see you, and they could go back and say that you trafficked them to go over there when they begged you for the ticket. They begged you for the time to spend with them. But that's because it don't say by force, like you transported by force. They just saying by transport. So if you pay for them after they begged you, it's still transporting. And that's how technical the law is, but that's the law. But these are the things that we're human. When we come up with things, we don't think of these little things. It's where one person grabs it, and that's what you call it, a loophole. So that becomes a loophole for the government to lock anybody up that pay for a woman's ticket to come see them. See, that's a loophole. And then we have loopholes now as criminals, and I'll say we because I was, but because I was, a criminal, we have loopholes that say that if the gun was locked in the car and you couldn't get to the gun, that you couldn't protect the drugs. So they can't charge you with the drugs that you have and carrying a weapon to protect and defend the drugs because the drugs is locked in the trunk. Before, they don't care where it was locked at. If it was in your car, in the trunk, locked in your wherever, you was being charged with that gun. But then a case in 1995, it was called U.S. versus Bailey, came out and it clarified what 924C means. That in order to give you the 5 years running consecutive, from the drug charge, they had to show that you had immediate control of that gun. And it being locked in the trunk is not immediate control. See how y'all get this law and this jewels over here? Well, welcome to the Mecca show. All right? But that's where that's at. That was a loophole for the criminals. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people was locked up for a gun that was in the back bedroom when they at the front with the drugs, and the police said the gun that was found in the back bedroom, hidden in the chest, locked up under the dresser drawer, was to protect the drugs. But if somebody came up and said, stick up, give me the drugs, and you got to say, let me run to go to the back room, go under the dresser, get out the key, and open the box, that mean that that gun ain't going to protect your ass. But the courts, the way it was written, was saying that they could do that. But then when it went up on appeal, when so many people lost and spent so many years in jail, it got overturned, and then they clarified it and let it be known that, no, the gun have to be in immediate use. See, that's a loophole for the criminals, and the loopholes for the government is the transporting for ex-trafficking. It don't say by force. So if you pay for a willing participant that begged you to get a ticket to travel to you, be on the lookout.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's clearly the angle that the prosecutors are going down, the track they're going down. But that kind of leads to the second point, which is the credibility of some of these witnesses. I mean, there's the old saying, conspiracies crafted in hell don't have angels as witnesses, right? We have witnesses in this case. Prosecutors called a male escort, right, to substantiate some of these allegations. Diddy's girlfriend got a reported $10 million plus payout with respect to being silent and not filing the charges against him. So you're absolutely right, but the credibility of these witnesses is crucial in this case, and I think that's one of the areas where the prosecutors have an uphill climb.
Let me real quick about this.
That's because the people's credibility in this case is not only that they being rewarded for their testimony, whether they're being rewarded their freedom or that bag. Because a lot of them is co-defendants that they just made witnesses. Let's get it right. Just breaking it down so y'all understand this. That's all it is.
Settlement. So she settled with Sean Combs for purportedly $20 million, then cooperated with the government. Not sure why. She didn't. It's not like she was in the middle of litigation and then, a favorable verdict would help her a lot. I mean, I don't know what the incentive would be for her to help. And then with the $10 million.
The incentive would be to help her so her ass wouldn't be sitting next to Diddy with a whole bunch of other witnesses against her and Diddy if she wanted to ride it out with Diddy. That's the incentive. The incentive is for her not to sit in a hot seat next to Diddy because obviously from the testimony, we know she was young. We know all of that. We know Diddy was dead wrong for talking to a young girl like that, and Diddy was beyond wrong for putting his hands on that woman. But at the same time, what this is looking like is a 10, 15-year catastrophe, dysfunctional relationship. And they're setting the standard for dysfunctional. So we can't step in and try and judge them on their twisted relationship because after this trial is over and said and done, if Diddy beat this, I wouldn't be surprised if him and Cassie get back together. They're two dysfunctional people and they like dysfunction, and that's why they love each other. They addicted to the toxicity of what they both bring to the table. And it's sad to say, and it's not the dog Diddy or dog Cassie or dog Cassie or dog Diddy. I'm just telling y'all what it is from a street point of view. These are one of the girls that no matter how good they look, you stay away from them. They the type of girl in a strip club that's in a strip club and you walk in the strip club and the first thing you say is, damn, I'll marry that. And then you got to think about it and say, hold up, if she looking that good, she's sitting in here butt naked, shaking her cheeks, instead of having a rich dude, like Diddy or whoever, Cuba Gooding Jr., or whoever on the side, something got to be wrong with her mental. She got to have a nasty attitude. Body banging, but the attitude too nasty for any man to deal with on a consistent basis. So when you look at that as either you're going to just enjoy the show or, you're going to lease it and bang it out, and then let it go. I'm just telling you how we look at it so you understand. So that's how I look at this relationship. Just a toxic relationship. See, those are the two, when you're in a strip club and you see a dude and a girl come walk in the strip club, that's Diddy and Cassie come walking there trying to see who they want. And what I'm surprised the most about with this trial right here, right, is that I didn't hear anybody say about Diddy with men yet. And they was running with that about Diddy. So somebody explain that. You know what I mean? They were saying that Diddy was into men, that he was bisexual, all types of stuff. But I don't hear any testimony of Diddy. I'm just saying, let's see where this go, because it's crazy how social media create what they want to create. All right.
$1 million with the Intercontinental Hotel, I imagine the prosecution could say, yeah, she deserved it. Nobody called police. The tape was essentially hidden. How does that affect her credibility? I'll give you a quick point on that as we talk about it.
No, great point. That's what the prosecutors are going to argue. I guess Diddy's lawyers are going to come back and say, look, this is an ex-girlfriend. She's now married. She's upset with him. She got a huge payout. You know, attack her credibility. Will it be effective? I don't know, but I think that's the route they're going to take.
So in the
it depends on the mind state of the jury that was chosen to be on that stand, if they will go with that defense or not, because that's the way the majority of the people in, you know, the regular world see it. And then you get people that's caught up in the emotional world that this is just a monster and he's just guilty of every and anything. Just lock him up. I don't care if it's the RICO or it's the JICO, just lock him up. You know, that's where a lot of passionate people is at, and they have a right to be passionate, and I understand their passion. But when you're talking about someone's life or liberty, that's why they say that, you know, Lady Justice is blind and she wears the blindfold over her eyes. You have to put the blindfold over your eyes and not look at Diddy as the monster that he is, or you believe he is, or that the people see him to be. That's what the law is about, separating that and judging a man by his straight character and his actions from the evidence that's being presented. That's what a trial is about. But on social media, a trial is about who's hurt the most. How many people is he hurt? Determines his guilt. All right, let's keep this moving.
Veil of, you know, we're talking about potential losses to the defense. I mean, we know that as soon as it came out that this footage of the March 2016 alleged attack on Cassie by Combs, that would come into evidence, right? Some form of it, whether it's cell phone videos of the surveillance footage, different angles of the surveillance footage. This was something that Combs' team had tried desperately to make sure a jury would not see. As soon as we knew it came in, it was going to be a problem for the defense. It's horrifying, to say the least. And again, the prosecution has asserted, and so has Cassie, that this was after a freak-off. So arguably, you have a more straightforward road to sex trafficking, right? Force, commercial sex acts. But Andrew, if the argument comes out, well, you know, why didn't Cassie leave? 11 years of abuse, sex trafficking, she never left, called police, reported him. Well, fear of physical violence, look at the tape. If she didn't do what he wanted, that's what was in store for her. Can't the prosecution make that argument?
They absolutely can make it, and they will make it. But I just think the length of the relationship that she had with Diddy, the text messages that she sent expressing, you know, affection and wanting to participate in some of these freak offs, it's not quite the open and shut case. I think it's probably going to be enough to have these jurors say, yeah, you know, he's guilty on these charges. But it's still an uphill climb for prosecutors. It really is. This is not an easy case for them.
What do you make of the defense saying, well, you know, Combs was maybe going through drug withdrawal, he was irritable, and if that's some sort of, I mean, they said in their opening statement that tape, the 2016 tape, was indefensible, and yet they're making the point about him withdrawing from drugs and what state he was in. What do you make of that defense?
All right, stop. Stop the crap right now. They done woke me up with this crap right here, man. Come on. They making this whole trial about this tape and about him whooping Cassie. We know he whooped Cassie. Let's move past that. But we do have 6 weeks, so the government do have some tricks up their sleeve. So we're going to see everything we're looking for is all that I'm saying. But they're jumping the gun and they're trying to convict you of everything that he do along the step of the way of the production of the evidence from the prosecution. Because this week, the prosecution, I'm giving to you my breakdown on last week's episode of the first week of the trial. The prosecution didn't do a slam dunk case because here it is. This is how we see it from the street, and you don't know if anybody from the jury is on the street. Now, you got a young girl, 19 years old. She got a mother that's in her life because the mother continuously tell her to write a book, right? She's dealing with a man twice her age, let's say. So now she's dealing with a man twice her age. Mom's met this man. Mom's seen this. Mom's didn't put her foot down nowhere along the testimony that I hear that the mother say that she should not have done that and that she told her daughter I didn't approve of him. Nowhere did anyone say that. Now, they encourage that. As she's traveling and jet setting and going on fake movie auditions that she testified to, you know, that she told her mama that she was going to California for something, but she was really going to Arizona or wherever she was going. You understand? Now, this is a person making these moves to conceal these choices that they made, even though, yes, this is a 19-year-old woman. Because they say when you're 18-year-old woman. That's all I'm saying. This, I would go at it as a defense. And then I'll also bring up the fact that, you know, I've seen plenty of, you know, minors, 14, 15, and 16 being charged as an adult for their choices that they made in life too. So because they're the aggressor, they should be treated different than the victim when they're both of the same mind state from the same age that they're at? Or is this the part where we put our emotions in it and said, but he did this and she only did that? And that's why Lady Justice is blindfolded. And that's how I had to look at my case to get off my life plus 20 years sentence. My natural life, meaning that I was supposed to die in prison life. I got that off me from putting the blindfolds on both of my eyes and stopped looking at it compassionately about how the government screwed me in my mind. And I had to take that out and get into my heart, my mind, my real mind, my pure mind. Not my wanting revenge mind. My pure mind. And then I found the key to get out. But you have to get with yourself to figure out whatever you're dealing with. This is jewels to these young people. But first thing you got to do is take responsibility for your actions. I knew I violated. I knew I sold drugs. I knew I deserved to be locked up. So when I got locked up, I wasn't mad that I got locked up. I was mad that I got life with no chance of parole plus 20 years. That's what I was mad at. So I subtracted that from why I was locked up. So now I'm mad at the time that I have to get off me, so I have to go back to the crime. And that's when I went to the law library and studied once I learned to read and write, because I didn't know how to read and write when I went to prison. I learned to read, write, and fight my way out this case and get on YouTube and talk to y'all. And I know I'm reaching a lot of y'all because y'all called this phone. You know, y'all called this phone. And I appreciate everyone that called. I'll be busy sometime, but definitely leave a voice message or a text. If you want to get on the show to voice your opinion, this channel is for you. This ain't for me. This is a channel for us, to talk to us, about us, to better improve us, to tear down the negative us. That's what this channel is about. It's not to come up here and badmouth the next podcast and do this and that. I'm going to make a video, you know, about a special interview that I got. And I'm going to let it be known how people create false narrative in order to try and use people's name to elevate to the next level instead of just contacting that person and being a righteous man and asking, can we do something together so I could eat too? It's that simple. Let's get back to this. Let's take the ride.
That's a double-edged sword, because if I'm the jurors, I'm sitting there thinking, well, this aberrant, disgusting, horrific behavior, why did a guy who's worth a couple $100 million and famous and had so many women liking him engage in this sort of activity? Well, you know, the jurors could possibly say he was on drugs, he was an alcoholic, he was a drug addict, whatever the case may be. But it certainly doesn't excuse his behavior. I think the defense team might be arguing this in part if he is convicted, to be able to argue to the judge, look, you didn't have the proper a mental state, the mens rea, to commit these crimes. Therefore, don't sentence him to the maximum. But it's a double-edged sword. They're kind of dancing on the head of the pin with that argument.
Now let me.
No, no, no. Disagree. Bottom line is, the video showed that he done whooped her. End of story. You know what I mean? Can't run from it. Now let's move past it. That's what he's trying to do. But everyone is trying to stick to this. But I want to know, how did these ass whoopings add up to forcing her to do what she did actually and such? We know it happened from her pissing him off. I didn't hear her say, I was leaving the room because I didn't want to participate in the thing. Maybe that's what she said. I didn't hear it. Is that what she said? That I was trying to get away from the freak off, or she was just trying to get away from him for the moment because whatever happened? Because then she went back for another freak off. Then she went back for another freak off. But then, to her defense, all she needed to say is, one time, I want to get out this room, and that door's supposed to open. I don't care how rock hard you are, that door's supposed to open, that joint's supposed to shrivel up. You're supposed to respect that woman's right and open that door. So in no way is this defending it. I'm just letting you see both sides of it. Because they in the middle of everything, and he deep up in it, and she's speaking, oh my God. And then she says, stop, let me out. It don't matter for what. It don't matter for why. Stop, push back, door open, let her out. If she want to come back, she come back. If she don't, get the next trick. I mean, girl. You know what I mean? You know, I just tapped into myself right now. You follow where I'm coming from, though? Am I making any sense with the words that are coming out my mouth, or I'm just talking to be talking? Because if so, I could always just do the intro. And get up out of here. All right, let's keep it moving, because we like to ride.
Move on to another potential loss for the defense, another potential blow to the defense's case. So a big part of the prosecution's case is establishing that Combs used not only violence and threats, but blackmail and financial control to get Cassie to do what he wanted. Again, important for sex trafficking, also part of racketeering. Cassie had testified that Combs paid for her rent, gave her cash, controlled her career. In fact, Combs' former assistant, David James, testified that Cassie told him, man, this lifestyle is crazy. And he told her, you should leave, or why don't you leave? And she responded, I can't get out, citing how Combs pays for her life, controls her music career. And he testified, I just didn't think that she could easily leave.
Hold up, so you trying to tell me that she couldn't easily just get on a bus and go home to her mama? Or is that when she says she can't, that she can't leave it because she's loving it so much and it's blowing her mind because it's moving so fast because her mind haven't developed enough to really conceive it? That was a cry for help, that statement. She cried out for help then. But whoever she cried to didn't fully understand that statement. She was addicted to the money and didn't want to leave that lifestyle. But she knew from the way she was raised that she didn't belong in that lifestyle. And as she stayed, she sunk deeper and deeper and deeper because she never walked into that lifestyle, because she was never a part of that lifestyle. So she came in from the bottom, and from the bottom she went down and down and down and down. And then she met the trainer, you know, just like the dancers. You know what I mean? Come on. All right, let's keep this moving.
Kerry Morgan testified to the same thing too. This is Cassandra Ventura's former best friend. And then I'm reminded about the allegation that Cassandra Ventura made about the plane incident, where Combs allegedly showed her freak-off videos on a plane. She testified she felt trapped. Then after they landed, he wanted a freak off, and when they landed, they had a freak off. To me, it feels like the most straightforward potential argument for sex trafficking. So you have a travel element, you have a coercion element or threat element, you have a freak off. She testified she felt trapped. Then after they landed, he wanted a freak off, and when they landed, they had a freak off. To me, it feels like the most straightforward potential argument for sex trafficking. So you have a travel element, you have a coercion element or a threat element, you have a freak off, so you have this commercial sex act element. Andrew, do you...
How do you get that out of? She willingly flew there, got off the joint. He suggested they have a freak off, and she said, yeah. First of all, y'all watching this, right? We keeping this 100. A female know when a dude fly them somewhere that they expect something. They're not flying them there just because they look good and they want their company. Let's stop it. Y'all know that. So now when you get there and they present that, does that mean that you're forced to say yes? Because you obviously knew that the question was going to present itself. Right or wrong? Come on, man. Let's get back to this. We got to ride.
You think that this is a blow to the defense, this idea of control and that she can't leave?
Yeah, that might be the best argument that prosecutors have because it's straightforward, it's basic, the jury can understand it, and intuitively it makes sense. That's where you can leverage the defendant's wealth against him with respect to these charges. And
why? Because he had money and he flew her out the country or wherever. She have to say yes? No, she could say no and stay there in the airport and call the plane back, call the mama, got the money hustled up from the people that cared about her making it back home safe, like regular people. She didn't have to keep moving forward into the darkness. That was a bad choice. That we have to claim our responsibilities, our actions, no matter where we at mentally. If we make these choices and we're an adult, and then we're responsible for these choices. Just like when you make those choices and you commit a criminal act, you get punished for that. So if you make those choices and you become a victim, then, you're treated the same as anyone else that make these choices willingly. And that's how I argue if I was a devil.
And I think that's probably reality. I haven't seen the full testimony with respect to everything he has lavished on her. I'm certain it's going to be more fully developed during this case, but I think that's a great, great argument for prosecutors.
And, she also apparently sent him a message, please delete any video out of your phone if you have them. Too many people have access to your stuff. By the way, Mr. James had testified that Combs had told him and said that he called Cassie moldable. And Combs said that I got her right where I wanted her. She's young. So, Andrew, you're hearing the prosecution, why they would want the jury to hear that evidence. The defense seemed to suggest, well, there were alternative interpretations here. Like he wasn't controlling her. He wasn't controlling her appearance, for example, to dominate her, but was providing constructive feedback because he was a fashion mogul. So this idea, again, of, 17-year age difference, started young with her, allegedly taught her a lot of, I hate to say this, but she even testified that, introduced her to certain sex acts. This idea of having control over her finances, career, moldable. Defense saying there's alternative interpretations here. How do you see it?
There certainly are alternative interpretations, but I think the jurors are going to look at it and just kind of see through it. This is powerful, powerful testimony and evidence, right? Because P. Diddy is so wealthy, because he's, in the music industry so substantially, because of her background, all of that kind of feeds right into the jurors' wheelhouse in terms of what was going on. I think that might be the reason. If Diddy is convicted, I think that might be the reason why he's convicted, because it's a really powerful argument.
And then you had Dawn Richard, again, this former member of Danity Kane, who testified to witnessing the alleged abuse of Cassie, testified to feeling that Combs was threatening, that he allegedly made a statement to her that she should keep quiet about Combs' alleged abuse, saying, where he comes from, people go missing if they talk. And she interpreted that as, quote, that we could die. And so she was concerned.
That's what that sounds like to me, dog.
For her safety to not intervene. There was also testimony that Combs himself and his team would constantly keep tabs on Cassie too. Kerry Morgan testified that Combs tried to use a hammer to break into Cassie's apartment. So this all goes to the idea of an environment of violence, an environment of threats, an environment where it's not so easy to speak up, not so easy to leave. Do you
You see how they just said, right? And I just said, yeah, that's what it sounds like. But that's one of those trick things, right? Because we got to take a ride on this. When they sat there and they made the statement, I just had a brain fart, but we're going to get this fart out the way, all right? They just made a statement. What was that they said? It was something they said I want to speak on. All right, let's get this back here.
And his team would constantly keep tabs on Cassie too. Kerry Morgan testified that Combs tried to use a hammer to break into Cassie's apartment. So this all goes to the idea of an environment of violence, an environment of threats, an environment where it's not so easy to speak up, not so easy to leave. Do you think that this is a problem for the defense to overcome?
That's it. Where they said that where I come from, people that do that go missing. That's nothing more. If I was the lawyer, I'm just praying. If I was the lawyer, I'm not defending them. I'm not defending them. God, defending them. I just had to give y'all this other point of it, right? When he said that, where I come from, people like that go missing, right? How many of y'all said back in the days he would have got his head chopped off of that? Back in the days, these kids would have never survived. Does that mean that you're saying that you plan on taking out one of these kids? Because you're saying back in the day, you know, he would have got killed. You would have got killed for that. The kids would have got killed for what they're doing today. This one would have got killed today. Does that mean that, you know, you're threatening someone because you say that? This is what I would say if I was a lawyer. You know, that was no different because Diddy is from a violent background and he's saying that, you know, where I come from, you running your mouth, doing whatever, is equivalent to losing your life back in my day. But does that mean that I'm going to take your life if you do that? That's how I would present it. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, it's certainly a problem, but someone like Dawn Richards, I mean, she has a lawsuit pending against Diddy, and I would expect that to be a central argument throughout the case, that all of these witnesses who have lawsuits pending against Diddy have an agenda. They have an incentive to convict him. Now, will that be enough for jurors to say, you know, her credibility isn't substantial enough for me to believe her? I don't know, but it's certainly an attack angle for the defense.
Oh, I will tell you, the cross-examination of Dawn Richard was something. You know, keep hitting her on inconsistent statements that she made, allegedly bringing up details now when she's testifying. There was testimony about, you know, why did you seem to try to work again with Diddy or stay in contact with Diddy? You know, a financial incentive, a lawsuit, always an important area for cross-examination. But I do want to move on to another part, another potential blow to the defense. So I think the prosecution has done an effective job at showing, you know, did Cassie really consent to all of this? She testified to getting urinated on. Daniel Phillip testified that Combs directed he and Ventura to role play during these sexual sessions, the freak-offs, and what to do. And I think there's evidence to establish that while she may have initially agreed to the freak-offs and even encouraged them and set them up, that was not all the time. You have this alleged text from her to Combs saying, this is all we do. There's another time when she said she wanted to talk to Combs about freak-offs, and he guessed, quote, now you don't want to do it anymore? Oh, I already know. You so predictable. So having the jury believe that these freak-offs, maybe not all of them, but a portion of them were non-consensual is going to be key to this defense. Do you think that this is a blow to the defense as I've outlined it?
That's so hard to say. I mean, some of these jurors may be sitting there thinking, look, if she didn't want to partake in this activity after the first one, she should have left. After the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. And I get the argument that, look, Diddy was controlling her through finances, through money, through coercion. And I get it. But I just think it's going to be hard for these jurors to think after partaking in so many of these that she was being forced into them. look, I think the allegations with respect to the urination, I mean, it's so disgusting. It's so deprived that I have a feeling some jurors are just going to look past so much more of the evidence and say this guy is guilty. But I think that kind of gets to the argument that the prosecutors have an uphill climb on some of these charges. It took place so many times, and some of these jurors are going to say if she wanted to leave, she could have,
Yeah.
and she.
I think a lot of this comes down to psychological evidence. We did a whole other sidebar on this about how the prosecution is going to call their own forensic psychologist to testify about, or a psychologist to testify about their reasons why victims don't leave their abusers and coping strategies and things of that nature. And the defense, is going to call their own witness to rebut that. But there's problems. I mean, there's other evidence. The messages. One message from Cassandra Ventura Fine to Combs that says, going to FO on Tuesday. There's a conversation where it appears Combs is saying how his favorite times are when they FO'd and then made love afterwards, to which Ventura responds, yeah, I like those times. Combs writes, anything you need me to get or set up in case we want to FO? And Ventura Fine responds, oh, hit whoever would turn you on to see me with. And there's another message. Wish we could have FO'd before you left. My period is over. So I agree with you. Those could be problematic for the prosecution's case, and definitely something the defense is honing in on. Okay, now, going to a potential blow to the defense, I have to say Combs is facing 2 charges of transportation to engage in prostitution, okay? And these charges are with respect to 2 different victims, including victim 1, Cassie Ventura Fine. And just let me read what it says in the indictment. Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Now, for purely purposes of alleged facts matching up to the elements, if you take as true...
Hold up. So he fly them there, right? He takes them shopping while they're there. Spend money on them while they're there. Gives them money. But no statement is made, give me $2,000 for you tapping this. Instead, here's $2,000. So where's the prostitution? That's an agreement. Some people call that a relationship. You know what I mean? Let's keep it moving.
What we've heard so far, it seems to me at least, Andrew, the prosecution could easily convict Combs of this. Because Ventura testified that freak-offs would happen with Combs and a male escort in New York, Miami, LA, Ibiza, Spain, Turks and Caicos. She explained how escorts were paid to have sex with her. She was shown photographs of alleged sex workers, like one called the Punisher, how at least one escort was used in multiple cities. There's a lot of talk about traveling. Daniel Phillip testified about being paid to have sex with Cassie while Combs watched. I mentioned before the plane incident with allegedly being shown videos of freak-offs. They land, and then they have a freak-off, presumably with a sex worker. You don't need force, fraud, or coercion. It's like transporting people for purposes of prostitution. Andrew, to me, that feels like the toughest case for the defense to fight against, out of all the charges.
All right, what I would ask if that was me, I would ask one simple question. I would ask Cassie one question. Cassie, was you a prostitute? I know that's harsh, but you got to be direct. Was you a prostitute? And she said, no, I wasn't a prostitute. Then how did that mean that he took her over there for prostitution? This was just a twisted relationship that they had. I'm saying even the guys that he flew over there, right? They said they was escorts and they wanted X amount of time for the hours that they was going to put in, including the flight hours or whatever. And he bought a flight ticket and he pays them, they say, 10 grand a piece. You know what I mean? And they come over, and this is a legal job. And then they go in there and they boom, 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 boom. But that's what they do. But because it's for a multi-millionaire, now it's prostitution? But isn't it prostitution when you go to a lonely woman or widow or husband that just lost his wife's house and, bone him in his house or in a hotel? Isn't that also prostitution? When they get an escort service? Because all I'm hearing them say is escorts. I didn't say them, I ain't hearing nobody say no hoes. You know what I mean? I ain't hearing nobody say no hoes. You know what I mean? I haven't even heard them say strippers. They call them escorts now. But then the prosecution is calling them, prostitutes now. You brought them over there to prostitute. So they saying that, the punisher was a prostitute. You know what I mean? No, the government is labeling him as a prostitute because if they flew him across state line, he went over there to prostitute is what the government is saying. But he would say he went over there to escort. But the law says whatever the jury decide at the end of this trial. You see how this thing play out? I let y'all know real smooth. It's almost over. Bear with me.
Yeah, and it's basic stuff that these jurors can follow, they can understand. It's not very complicated. It's bad. It's disgusting. So those are the sorts of facts that these prosecutors just love jamming down the throats of the defense and, quite frankly, the jurors as well, because that's about as solid as it gets. So these prosecutors obviously want to play this up because it is nefarious, it is bad, and it is very important in this case.
It's potentially 10 years in prison. That's what we're talking about with that charge. And look, I think the defense is trying to say, this is what they came out in their opening statement, that he was paying these people for their time and experience. I don't think that goes very far. Maybe they're trying to say, he wasn't instrumental in it, but time and experience, I don't know exactly what that defense means.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I kind of call that the red face defense. As a defense attorney, a lot of times you present an argument and it just doesn't really pass the red face test. You're hoping one or two jurors may buy it, but that is very much an uphill climb for Diddy and his team.
And look, to be clear, this episode was dedicated to potential losses or blows to the defense, but you articulated it so well. This is not a slam dunk case for the prosecution. This is a high burden for racketeering, for sex trafficking. There are people scratching their heads and still trying to understand how this, matches up to it. I think this is a case that's going to be maybe won or lost in closing arguments, right? I think that this is about how it's properly articulated, laid out, what the jury instructions are. I think it comes down to the very end of this case.
Boom, that's it. And prosecutors have a 95% win rate in federal court.
And 90% of those is from people pleading guilty. That's what they call a win. But those is not. 90% of people don't even go to trial in the feds.
New York prosecution team, of course, are like the New York Yankees of the prosecutor's office, right? But in the same sense, we know we have a long track record of celebrities being found not guilty on some really heinous, horrific crimes, right? O.J. Simpson is the quintessential example, but obviously Michael Jackson and so many others. When you have the resources of Diddy, you can afford the top flight legal teams. You can afford the consultants with respect to the juries. You can have the top expert witnesses. And obviously that makes a huge, huge difference. So a lot of people have written this case off and said to themselves, wow, Diddy's guilty. Well, he's clearly guilty of being a scumbag, right? I don't think there's any question about that. But we still have a long way to go. We are probably in about inning 2 of a 9-inning ball game, and Diddy is in this case.
Andrew Stoltman, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Would love to have you back.
All right. So that was Andrew Stoltman and Jesse Weber. What did you think of this presentation? Put it in the comments. We're just trying to break it down so you understand it from a hood point of view. Make sure you follow my daughter's YouTube channel at Juanita Mecca Audio, Unique Mecca Audio Prison Stories, Mecca Audio TV. Let's keep it moving. All right.
Cheers, cheers, toast the crime, toast the crime, the crime, the crime, the crime. What?
fresh out the can of 26. He back on the strip, getting back in the mix. What he mentions a gift. You stand up 10 toes down, and I suggest you pay attention to this. Take a little gully posse and put it in Harlem. He cut from the bottom, came up from the bottom. Drop the book, you should go and get it. The Instagram page and the YouTube, you could go and visit. Then you could consider yourself LinkedIn. Sit front row and get Jews from a kingpin. How he went through it, so you ain't gotta go do it. To not pay attention would be stupid. Talking about a man that probably put your grandfather on. Probably the reason that him and your grams got along. A man that generated millions on the block, did his time, never squilling to the cops, Mecca audio.
Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. Mecca what? Mecca audio. And we gon' do it like. We gon' do it like. We keep it moving like. We gotta do it like.
Get it live like 2 G's in the 90s. Drop top beamer so shiny. I let shorty go, she was whiny. Treat her like my past, she behind me. Spend a couple bands on the Dapper Dan. You be back again, getting green like a Packers fan. No cap, it's a roaring uptown. They be horn uptown, Dominican bust downs. Now we on the positive, we got a lot to give. Now he trying to stop the kids from being inoperative. So take heed, homie, lend an ear. He started in uptown, he gon' finish dead. But now it ain't about selling drugs, buying cars. It's about buying property to make the community ours, so we can give back to the